Hello everyone, welcome back to the Java tutorial series. In this video, we will learn about the finally block in Java. So by the end of this video, you will understand what the finally block is, why we use the finally block, and when the finally block executes. And we will see some situations where finally may not execute, and also we will see best practices for using finally. So let's get started. So what is finally block? So the finally block is used to write code that should execute after try and catch blocks. Okay. So finally block executing code regardless of any exception. Okay. It will always execute. So we will see in some situation it will not execute. What are those situations we will see. So the finally block contains code that executes after the try and catch block. Okay, so let's say we have some try block, and inside try we have some lines of code, and catch block is handling exception, and after that we'll be having finally block. Okay, finally. So finally block will come after catch block. So what is the sequence? Try, then catch, then finally. Okay, so the finally block contains code that should be executed after the try and catch block, and mostly it will use for cleanup activities. That means closing of the resources or database connection close. So some cleanup activities, if you want to do at the last of the program, then we can provide in the finally blocks. And no matter what, it will execute whether an exception occurs or not. Okay, so finally block will always execute even if we are not getting any exception, and also even if we are getting exception, then also it will execute. Finally block will execute always. Okay, no matter of we are getting exception or not. So the finally block is used to write the code that should execute after the try and catch block, and it is mostly commonly used for cleanup activities such as closing files, or it can be database connections. Okay, in most cases it executes whether an exception occurs or not. Okay, no matter exception is occurring or not. The next question comes, why do we need finally? Why we are learning this finally keyword? So many resources such as files, database connections. Okay, files, it can be database connection. Okay, so these resources should be closed after use. So once we have utilized these resources, we need to close these resources. Okay, so in that case, the finally block ensures that cleanup code executes regardless of we are getting exception or not. Okay, so what it will do, it will close files, it will close database connection, or release some system resources if we are utilizing those resources, and it will perform cleanup operations. So these are like exiting fundamental, we can say. Okay, so this will execute no matter if we are getting exception or not. So that's why for closing database connection, closing files, and closing resources, and for cleanup operation, we need finally to execute. Okay, so what is the syntax? Try block, and then inside try we will be having some risky code, and inside catch block we will be having exception handling. Okay, and we will handle exception, and after that finally block. So finally block, what it will do, it will do cleanup code. Okay, so first, how the execution flow, try, then catch, then finally. So this is the execution flow. Okay, so try block will contain the risky code, and catch block will handle the exception, and cleanup code will be performed by the finally block. So this is the basic syntax of finally block. Okay, the finally block comes after the try and catch blocks and is typically used for cleanup operations. Okay, so let's go to IntelliJ, see some examples so that we'll have some clarity. Okay, so let us write try block. Okay, inside try block I am writing int result equals to 10 divided by 0. So we know that in this line we will get which exception? We will get arithmetic exception. Okay, now I will print simply message whatever the reason for getting that exception, I am printing that. Okay, so which block we should write after try and catch? Okay, so we will write finally block, finally. Okay, so this is finally block, and inside finally block you can do the cleanup activities, but for now I am writing finally block executed. To understand the execution flow I am writing this. Okay, so what will be the execution flow? We are writing this line, and after getting exception in this line it will execute arithmetic exception after finding matching catch block, and after this exception we will execute this line. Okay, and out of this try and catch block and finally block, remaining lines of code will get executed. Okay, it is not like program will end after executing try and catch block, try catch finally block. It will execute remaining lines of code. So what will be the output? Here it will print the exception cause and then finally block executed and then program end. Let's verify. See, divide by 0 is the exception message, then finally block executed, then remaining lines of code, program end. Okay, so an arithmetic exception occurs and is handled by catch block. After that the finally block executes, and then the remaining statements continue to execute. Okay, so you might be thinking, okay, we are getting exception, so catch block is getting executed and then finally block. What if we are not getting any exception in the try block? Then what will happen? Okay, so in that case let us write some valid scenario. 10 divided by 2, let's say, and I will print this time the result. Okay, that's it. So this time this is valid scenario, so it will not throw any exception in the try block. Okay, since we are not getting any exception, catch block will be skipped and directly finally block will execute. Okay, so what will be the output? The result in the try block, that is 5, and after that it will directly execute finally block executed and then remaining lines of code, that is program end. Let's verify it. See, try block, then finally block executed, then remaining lines of code, that is program end. So in this example no exception occurs, the catch block is skipped, but the finally block still executes. Okay, and then remaining lines of code. So let us understand the execution flow, how the flow of execution is occurring. Okay, so if no exception is occurring, okay, we are not getting any exception, So what it will do, it will first execute the try block. Okay, since we are not getting any exception, so will it execute catch block or not? So since we are not getting any exception, it will skip the catch block and it will execute the finally block. Okay, finally block will be executed. So we have seen the definition. Finally block will always execute even if we are getting exception or not getting exception. Okay, so it will execute. Then continue with the remaining lines of code. We have seen just now with the examples. And second scenario, if you are getting an exception, okay, so after execution of try block, transfer control to the matching catch block. So after try block, it will go to the matching catch block, and after execution of the catch block, it will execute the finally block, and after finally block execution, it will continue with the remaining lines of code. So this is what the execution flow. So we have to keep in mind whether an exception is occurring or not. The finally block executes before the program moves to the next statement after the try catch finally block. So finally block will always execute even if we are getting exception or not getting. Okay. Now next question comes, can finally exist without catch? So in this example, we have written try, then catch, then finally. Now the question comes, can finally execute even if we are not providing catch block? So let's say I am deleting catch block, and inside this I am removing all this. I will just print for simplicity inside try block. Okay, so this time we are not having the catch block. Okay, so this is a valid scenario or how is it? So a finally block can be used directly with a try block. Okay, so in this case, what will happen? It will execute the code inside try block and it will execute the finally block. So you must be thinking, okay, if you are writing finally directly after try, then what will happen if we get an exception inside try block? So answer to this question is, if an exception occurs inside try block and is not handled means we have not provided catch block, then the finally block still executes before the execution is propagated to the caller. Okay, let's verify it. So I'm running the program. So inside try block, then finally block executed, then program end. Okay, so this is with no exception. And let's say inside try block, I will write int result equals to 10 divided by 0. So this time we will get exception, right? So line number 9, we are getting arithmetic exception, but we are not handling this exception. Okay, so it will directly execute the finally. Let's verify it. See, so how the execution flowed in this one? Line number 9, we got the exception. So in line number 9, it is throwing the matching exception class, arithmetic exception. So in line number 9, it is throwing an exception and we have not handled any exception. We are not providing any catch block. So ideally, program should terminate immediately. But since we are providing finally, so as we know, finally will execute after try catch block. So finally will execute, then it will terminate. That's why it is printing. You can see here finally block executed. So before terminating the program, immediately it is calling finally block, and after execution of finally block, program is terminating. It is not going the remaining lines of code. See, program end is not printed. If you want, I can show you by debugging. Okay, we will see the execution flow, how it is flowing, why this line is getting printed. Finally, it should be terminated immediately, like that you might be thinking, right? So from line number 9, we are getting an exception. Okay, we'll open console. So it will go to it. Ideally, it should terminate at this line since we have not provided any catch block. Okay, but what will happen? See, it went to the finally block, and after execution of the finally block, see, finally block executed, it printed in the console. It executed the finally block. After that, it terminated the. So after closing of the finally block, program will terminate. Okay, so finally block still executes even if we are getting exception, and we are not handling exception with the catch block. Even then finally block will execute. Okay, now let's see when finally block will not execute. So yes, you might be thinking, right, in which case finally block will not execute. Okay, so when we are calling system.exit in the try block, okay, try block, or it can be in the catch block also, and if that particular catch block is executing. So whenever we call this system.exit, at that point of time, system will exit and finally block will not execute. Or you can say JVM crashes or forcibly terminated. If you are closing forcefully, then finally block will not execute. Or maybe power failure or system shutdown. So in these cases, finally block will not execute. Okay. So although the finally block executes in most situations, so there are few exceptions. Okay. So if system.exit, it is called the JVM crashes, or it might be the process where forcibly terminated, or the system loses power. So in these cases, the finally block may not execute. So what are the best practices? So we should follow some principles like finally block should be used for cleanup activities. Avoid writing business logic inside finally. Okay, business logic should be always present in the try block. Finally should be used for cleanup activities. Okay, keep it simple and focused. Prefer try with resources for resource management when applicable. Okay, what is try with resources? So now what we are doing, we are writing like this try block. Okay, and we are providing catch block, and then finally. So what is the definition of finally? It is used for cleanup or closing the resources. Closing the resources. So let's say we are using one resource scanner inside try block. Scanner is the one resource. A scanner sc equal to new scanner. Okay, and in the finally block we are closing that resource here. So this is like normal approach. And in the last one, what it is saying, prefer try with resources for resource management whenever applicable. That means opening resource in the try block and closing in finally block. Instead, we can use try with resource. How it will work? Try with resource means after try, we need in the parentheses, we need to provide the resources scanner. Okay, and we will be writing. So if we are using parenthesis after try and we are providing the class scanner or whatever resource we are using inside this one, in that case we do not we do not need to close resource explicitly. Okay, it will close resource automatically here once it is used. So that is an advantage of try with resources. Okay, let's focus on the finally block for now. Okay, so let's quickly summarize what we have learned so far. So the finally block executes after try and catch block. It usually executes whether an exception is occurring or not occurring. Finally block will execute. And it is mainly used for resource cleanup. And it may not execute. We have seen some of the situations finally block will not execute. It might be power failure, JVM terminates, and if we are using system.exit, so in those cases, finally block will not get executed. Okay, that's all for this video. I hope this tutorial helped you understand finally block in Java. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.